Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Alex's English Podcast. I'm Alex, and I'm so happy you're here with us today. This podcast is designed to help you improve your English in a simple, clear, and fun way. If this is your first time listening, welcome to the family. And if you've been here before, thanks for coming back. Today, I'm joined by my wonderful friend, Sophia. How are you, Sophia?
Hi, Alex. Hi, everyone. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. I'm really excited about today's topic because it's something a lot of English learners struggle with. We're going to talk about how to stop translating in your head. Right, Alex?
That's right. Many learners say, I think in my language first, then I translate into English, and it makes them speak slowly. They feel stuck or they worry they'll make mistakes. So they want to speak English directly without translating. But how?
Exactly. It can be frustrating to feel your brain doing a lot of extra work. First thinking in your native language, then converting every word into English, and then worrying about grammar or pronunciation. It's like carrying a heavy backpack while trying to run.
Good analogy, Sophia. That's exactly how it feels for many people. So in this episode, we're going to share tips, stories, and practical strategies to help you think more in English, reduce translation time, and become more fluent.
Yes, we'll talk about how to create a more immersive experience for yourself, even if you're not living in an English-speaking country. We'll also discuss how to change your mindset so your brain can adapt and process English more naturally.
Great, let's jump right in. The first thing I want to mention is the importance of regular exposure to English. If we only use English once a week in a class, our brains don't have enough time to develop the habit of thinking in English. We need daily practice.
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest reasons people keep translating in their heads. They only use English occasionally, so their brain doesn't stay in English mode. If you immerse yourself, even in small ways, you start to form a direct connection to English.
Right? For example, if you can listen to English podcasts, watch TV shows, or read articles in English every day, that helps a lot. You don't have to understand everything. It's just about creating an environment where your brain sees and hears English regularly.
Exactly. Think of it like learning a musical instrument. If you only play guitar once a week, you progress slowly. But if you pick up the guitar every day, you start to think about music more naturally. It's the same with language.
That's a good comparison. Another tip is to switch your phone settings to English, your computer settings to English, even your social media apps if possible. Then, whenever you see messages or notifications, they're in English.
Yes, and that might feel strange at first, but soon you'll notice you're picking up new words and phrases without even trying. It becomes part of your daily life, so you stop translating. You just read the words and know what they mean.
Exactly. Another approach is to keep a small list of functional English expressions around you. For example, if you find yourself always translating "how are you" from your language into English, you can practice just saying it in English or thinking it in English.
Right? Or if you often find yourself wanting to say, I'm hungry or I'm tired, you can practice just forming that sentence in English right away. Over time, these common expressions become automatic.
Yes, that's key. We want to build a habit so that certain words or phrases don't require translation. They just pop into our mind as English. If we do that regularly with everyday phrases, the translation step starts to disappear.
Exactly. Let's move on to another strategy, thinking in English for a few minutes a day. We can do this as a daily exercise. For example, you can say, okay, for the next 5 minutes, I will only think in English. I won't allow my thoughts to be in my native language.
Yes, it might sound a bit silly, but it can work. You can do it while you're walking, cooking, or getting ready in the morning. You just describe what you're doing in English. I'm making coffee now. The water is boiling. I need to get the milk from the fridge.
Exactly. At first, it might be hard. You might forget a word and want to switch back to your native language, but that's okay. Just try your best. Even if you have to say something like, I'm taking the thing you open to get food inside, oh, fridge. That's part of the process.
Right. The goal is to force your brain to search for the English words you need. Over time, it gets easier. You start to recall words faster. You're training your mind to go straight to English instead of taking a detour to your native language.
Exactly. It's like building a muscle. At first, it's weak, but with consistent practice, it becomes stronger. And eventually, you'll find yourself thinking in English without even trying.
Yes, that's such a good feeling. Now, let's talk about a problem some people face: fear of mistakes. They worry that if they don't translate carefully, they might use the wrong word or say something incorrect. So they prefer to translate in their heads to be sure it's right.
Yes, that's quite common. But we have to remember that mistakes are a natural part of learning any language. If we're always scared of making mistakes, we'll hold ourselves back. We'll speak less and we'll keep translating.
True. I always tell my students that making mistakes is a sign of progress. It means you're trying new words or structures. If you never make mistakes, you're probably not challenging yourself enough.
Exactly. Plus, in real conversations, people often make small mistakes, even native speakers. We don't realize it because we're used to it. But language is flexible. As long as you communicate your idea, it's okay to have small errors.
Right? We should aim for clarity, not perfection. If we let go of that fear, we can relax and let the English flow out. That, in turn, helps us stop translating because we trust ourselves to communicate.
Yes, that's so important. Another tip is to pay attention to the patterns of English. Sometimes we translate word by word because we don't know how English sentences are built. But if we learn common sentence structures and phrases, we can use them directly.
Exactly. For instance, if I know the phrase, "would you like to," is a polite way to invite someone to do something, I can just use that phrase as it is, without translating from my own language. It's stored in my mind as a chunk.
Right. Chunking is powerful. Instead of seeing language as individual words, we see it as groups of words that frequently go together. When we want to invite someone, we recall the chunk, "would you like to," and speak it naturally.
Yes, and that technique really helps with thinking in English. If we memorize or practice chunks of language, our brain can produce them quickly, rather than building sentences piece by piece.
Exactly. Now, another thing that might help is reading or listening to content at a level that's slightly below or at your current level. If the content is too difficult, we might keep translating or get frustrated. But if it's manageable, we can just flow with the English.
Right? That's called comprehensible input. The idea is to consume material that you mostly understand, so you're not constantly checking a dictionary or worrying about each word. This method helps you start thinking in English because you're not stuck on every sentence.
Yes, and you can gradually challenge yourself with harder materials. But if you jump into something very advanced too soon, you might revert to translating or feel discouraged.
Exactly. Also, speaking with people who don't share your first language can be helpful. Then, you're forced to use English. If you try to speak your native language, they won't understand. That can push you to think in English directly.
Yes, language exchange partners are great for this. If you meet someone from another country and you both want to practice English, you'll have no choice but to communicate in English. This environment really forces your brain to adapt.
Right? And that's the kind of push some people need. If you always have the option to speak your native language, you might switch to it when you're tired or stuck. But if that option doesn't exist, you work harder to find the English words.
Exactly. Another idea is to label things around your house in English. For example, put a small sticker on your door that says door, on your mirror that says mirror, and so on. Then every time you see it, you reinforce the English word.
Yes, that's a fun trick. It might look a bit silly, but it's a good way to remind yourself of simple vocabulary. And eventually, you stop translating mirror from your own language. You just recognize it as mirror.
Right? It's especially helpful for objects you don't talk about often or words you keep forgetting. Plus, it adds a bit of fun to your environment.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about the mindset shift that's necessary. We have to see English not as a code we translate into, but as a separate language with its own logic, patterns, and culture. If we respect that, we start to think differently.
Yes, it's almost like stepping into another world in our minds. We accept that English has different word order, different idioms, different ways of expressing ideas. We stop trying to fit English into our native language's structure.
Right? So instead of saying, in my language, we say it like this, so I'll just translate, we think, how do English speakers usually say this idea? We focus on the English perspective.
Exactly. That might require letting go of some direct translations. For instance, a phrase that works in your language might sound odd in English. We have to learn new expressions that convey the same meaning, but in the English style.
Yes, that's a big step. But once we do it, we find that speaking English is more natural. We don't have to do mental gymnastics to fit everything into an English sentence. We accept the new patterns.
Precisely. Another good exercise is to paraphrase in English. If you can't remember the exact word, try to describe what you mean using words you do know, all in English. Don't jump back to your native language.
Right? For example, if I forget the word umbrella, I can say, it's the thing you hold over your head when it rains. That way, I stay in English and I practice thinking in English to communicate.
Yes. This trick helps you avoid that habit of going back to your native language and then translating. Instead, you find a way to explain it in English. That's how you build fluency and confidence.
Exactly. And if someone tells you the word you forgot, you can learn it in context. You think, oh, that's called an umbrella. And now you have an English explanation in your mind, not a direct translation from your language.
Exactly. Another approach is to do some writing in English. Journaling, for example, can help you practice forming thoughts in English without pressure. You can write about your day, your plans, your feelings, and try not to translate. Just let the words flow as best you can.
Yes, writing is powerful because it gives us more time to think. We can notice when we slip into translating and then push ourselves to think directly in English. Over time, our writing becomes more natural.
Right? And if we read our own writing out loud, we get speaking practice too. It's a good combination. Also, we can look back at our old entries and see how we've improved.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about the role of grammar. Some people get stuck translating because they're worried about grammar. They want to be perfect, so they construct the sentence in their native language, then try to match each part to an English grammar rule.
Yes, that's a slow process. It can help at a very early stage, but to become fluent, we need to move beyond that. We need to develop an intuitive sense of English grammar by seeing it used over and over.
Right? That's why reading or listening extensively is so useful. The more we see correct grammar in action, the more we internalize it. Then, when we speak, we naturally produce the patterns we've absorbed instead of translating grammar rules.
Exactly. And even if we make mistakes, that's okay. We can learn from them. Eventually, we develop a feel for what sounds right in English. That's a sign we're not translating, but actually thinking in the language.
Yes, that's the ultimate goal. Another trick. If you find yourself trying to translate a sentence, pause and ask, how would a native speaker say this? Then try to recall a phrase or structure you've seen before. It might help you break the translation habit.
That's a good one. I used to do that when I was learning. I'd stop and think of a movie line or a phrase I heard on TV that matched what I wanted to say. Then I'd copy that pattern instead of making a direct translation from my language.
Exactly. I did something similar. Sometimes I'd remember a conversation I had with a native speaker. I'd think, how did they phrase that idea? Then I'd reuse it. It feels more natural that way.
Yes, for sure. Also, let's consider the emotional side. Some people feel anxious when speaking English, so they revert to translating as a safety net. They think, if I translate carefully, I won't sound silly. But that fear can slow us down.
Definitely. Anxiety can be a big barrier. We have to give ourselves permission to speak more freely, to use the words that come to mind, and to be okay if we're not perfect. That freedom can help us stop translating because we trust ourselves.
Yes. And the more positive experiences we have speaking without translating, the more confident we become. We realize that people can understand us, even if we're not perfect.
Exactly. Confidence is built through practice and small successes. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, we might be shaky, but after a while, we gain balance and realize we can do it.
I love that analogy. It's so true. Another practical tip is to use monolingual dictionaries sometimes. If we always use a bilingual dictionary, we get used to seeing direct translations. But a monolingual dictionary explains words in English.
Yes, that's a great way to train our brains to think in English. We learn definitions in English, examples in English, and synonyms in English. This keeps us in the language rather than hopping back to our own.
Exactly. It can be harder at first, but it pays off in the long run. We start seeing English as a complete system, not just a code to decode.
Right? Another tip is to pay attention to your internal monologue. Sometimes we talk to ourselves in our native language. We can try to switch that internal voice to English, at least some of the time. It's a bit strange, but it works.
Yes, it does. For example, if I'm walking and thinking, I need to buy groceries, maybe I should cook pasta tonight, I can switch to English. I need to buy groceries, maybe I should cook pasta tonight. Over time, that becomes more natural.
Exactly. It might feel funny, but it really helps. You're basically practicing private conversation with yourself. No one will judge you, and you can do it anywhere.
Right, it's a safe environment. Now let's consider the role of translation in learning. Translation isn't always bad, right? It can be helpful at the beginning to understand basic concepts. But the goal is to move away from it gradually.
Yes, that's true. When we're total beginners, a bit of translation is normal. We need to know what words mean. But as we progress, we want to rely on it less and less because direct translation can become a crutch that slows us down.
Exactly. It's like training wheels on a bike. They're useful at the start, but if we never remove them, we won't learn to ride freely. Eventually, we need to take off those training wheels, stop relying on translation, and trust our balance in English.
Yes, well said. Another idea is to practice responding quickly in English. If someone asks you a simple question like, "How's your day?" try to answer in English right away without pausing to translate. Just say something like, "It's going great, thanks. How about you?"
Right. Even if it's a short answer, that quick reaction is good training. It tells your brain, we speak English automatically now. And each time you do that, it becomes more natural.
Exactly. And if you don't know how to answer fully, you can say something short. The important part is to keep it in English, not to switch languages in your head.
Yes. Another helpful approach is watching or listening to content with English subtitles, if you need them, or sometimes with no subtitles at all if you can handle it. This helps you practice thinking in English while you follow the story.
Absolutely. If the subtitles are also in English, you connect the spoken words to their written form in English. You're not translating, you're just reinforcing the language. Over time, you might watch with fewer subtitles or at a faster speed.
Right? And if you watch something that you've already seen in your native language, you know the plot. So you can focus on the English dialogues. That's a sneaky way to avoid heavy translation.
Yes, that's a good tip. Another angle, we can use role play. If we have a friend who's also learning English, we can pretend to be in certain situations, like ordering at a restaurant, checking into a hotel, or having a job interview, and do it all in English.
Yes, role play is fun and practical. It helps us build automatic responses in English. Plus, it's a safe space to experiment with new words and expressions.
Exactly. And if we get stuck, we can ask, "How do you say this in English?" and then continue in English rather than translating everything ourselves.
Right? That's the difference. We're looking for an English explanation or an English expression, not a direct translation from our language. It's a small shift, but it makes a big difference.
Absolutely. Now, I want to emphasize patience. Stopping translation in your head takes time. We've developed habits over many years, thinking in our native language. Changing that habit won't happen overnight.
Exactly. It's a gradual process. Some days, you might feel you're thinking more in English, and other days you slip back into translating. That's normal. The key is to keep practicing.
Yes, consistency is crucial. Little by little, you'll notice it's getting easier. Maybe you'll catch yourself forming an English sentence in your mind automatically. That's a great sign of progress.
For sure. And each small success builds confidence. Once you see that you can have short conversations in English without translating, you'll want to do it more. It becomes a virtuous cycle.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to speak with native speakers. Sometimes we think they'll judge us, but usually they're happy to talk and they don't mind if we make mistakes. That real interaction is super valuable for learning to think in English.
Right? Most native speakers appreciate the effort, and if they correct you, it's a chance to learn. We should see corrections as gifts, not as criticism.
Yes, absolutely. Another piece of advice is to keep track of your improvements. For example, write in a journal how you feel about your English thinking process. Maybe last month you always translated, but this month you noticed some direct thinking in English.
That's a good idea. Noticing progress can motivate us to continue. Sometimes we only see what we still can't do, and we forget how far we've come.
Exactly. And you can also record yourself speaking. Listen after a few weeks or months to compare. You might hear that your speech is more fluid, with less hesitation and less mental translating.
Yes, that's a great suggestion. Audio or video recordings can show us real evidence of improvement. It's encouraging to hear the difference.
Definitely. Now, let's summarize some of the main points we shared about stopping translation in your head. 1. Immerse yourself daily in English. Listen, read, watch, and speak regularly. 2. Switch phone settings, apps, and social media to English. 3. Practice thinking in English for a few minutes each day. Describe your actions, talk to yourself. 4. Don't fear mistakes. Perfection isn't necessary. Communication is the goal. 5. Learn common English patterns or chunks so you can speak without building sentences from scratch. 6. Choose comprehensible input. Read or listen at your level so you don't rely on translation. 7. Interact with people who only speak English or who also want to practice English. 8. Label objects in your environment with English words. 9. Accept English as its own language, not just a code to translate into from your native language. 10. Paraphrase in English if you forget a word. Use descriptions instead of translating. 11. Write in English, journal, short stories, or daily notes without translating. 12. Focus on absorbing grammar naturally through exposure, not constant rule-by-rule translation. 13. Draw on known phrases or structures you've heard from native speakers. 14. Manage fear and anxiety. Build confidence through small successes. 15. Use monolingual dictionaries to stay in English. 16. Monitor your internal monologue and switch it to English sometimes. 17. Be patient. It's a process that takes time and consistency.
That's quite a list, Alex. But it shows that there are many ways to help our brains switch to English mode. Listeners can pick a few strategies that sound appealing and start testing them right away.
Yes, exactly. It might be overwhelming to do them all at once, so just choose one or two. Maybe this week you decide to practice thinking in English for 5 minutes each morning and switch your phone to English. That's a good start.
Right? And you can add more steps as you feel comfortable. The main idea is to replace the habit of translating with a new habit of direct English thinking. Little by little, your brain will adapt.
Exactly. And it's such a freeing feeling when you begin to realize you're forming sentences in English automatically. You can focus on the conversation or the message rather than on mentally juggling two languages.
Yes, it's wonderful. It makes speaking and listening so much more natural and enjoyable. We hope that all of you listening give these tips a try and see how they work.
Absolutely. And please, let us know in the comments how it goes. We love hearing your stories, your progress, and any challenges you face. We're here to help each other learn and grow.
Exactly. Before we sign off, we want to thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to Alex's English podcast. It really helps us keep making more episodes.
Yes, Your support means a lot. And don't forget to share this podcast with anyone you know who's learning English. Maybe they also want to stop translating in their head. The more, the merrier.
Definitely. Thank you again, everyone. Keep practicing, stay patient, and remember that every bit of progress counts. We'll see you in the next episode of Alex's English Podcast.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Keep thinking in English.